Guns, back at y'all again with another Black Ops Bang Dog TV. You know, first order of business is and always is building leaders and creating kings by building national development over generations. Building leaders and creating kings operation by building national development over generations. With that being said, I want to put the bottom line up front. Today I want to talk to y'all about sometimes in life, you gotta remind motherfuckers who you are. But excuse me, let me pause real quick. Before you remind other people, sometimes in life you gotta remind yourself who you are. You gotta remind yourself to remind other people who you are. I just said something. Like sometimes you gotta remind yourself. Because we forget it sometimes. We forget it. Like we go through life. Sometimes things come easy. Sometimes things come easy for us and we take it for granted. And sometimes things come hard for us. And we take it as if this is the end all be all. Whichever one, whether easy or hard, life is just what it is. It is what it is, and there's always a lesson. There's always something to be taught. There's always something to be learned. There's always something that you can capitalize on if you take the time to actually do just that, to capitalize on it. But if you don't remind folk who you are, if you don't remind yourself who you are, if you fail to remind yourself who you are time from time, then you lose yourself. You lose yourself. And the point of me saying, let me explain something. I ain't gonna give you a whole rundown, but I just started a new position somewhere else, right? I just started a new position, and in that new position was for a large, substantial amount of money. But in this position, I realized because it was hard, it was challenging. I realized that it was taking a toll on me. People, the places, and the things that was involved in this particular situation was taking a toll on me, and I started to lose myself. And then for some strange reason, something came up on me. Like, I don't know what I came across, but I definitely came across something. It was something on YouTube that, like, it was like a knock on the head. Dun, 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 dun. Boy, you don't know who the fuck you are. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you stand for. You don't know what you mean. You don't know your morals, your principles. Have you abandoned all of them? Have you abandoned them? And the answer to it was no. And then the simple answer after that was when remind these folk who the fuck you are. Remind these people who you are. And now that you remember, now remind these folk who you are. You know. So that's what I want to come to y'all and tell y'all about. Remember who you are. And then after you remember who you are, remind these folk who you are. Remember to remind yourself to remind others who you are. You're a pastor. And for whatever the reason, your congregation is no longer as large as it used to be. You got to step back and remember who you were and then remind folk who you were. You go off for a new job. You know, you're working a new job and you want to be successful in that job, but for whatever the reason, the things ain't take off the same way that you felt like it should have. Sometimes you got to remind yourself who you are. You understand what I'm saying? You in school, this your first year of school, your first year of college, you know. Your first year of college, you was an honor student all your life. But college is a little bit hard. You're away from your family, you're away from your friends, you're away from your comfort zone. Then guess what? Sometimes you gotta go in that dorm and sit back and relax and then, wipe your brow and then remind yourself who the fuck you are. You understand what I'm saying? Remind yourself who you are. You're a business owner. Embarking on a new endeavor, something that you really never invested in before, but you did your research. You did your research. You did your due diligence. You know what it is that you want. You know what you want out of it. You just don't know exactly what's going to come out of it because you never embarked on that before. But you know the success that you've had with your other businesses. You got to remind yourself who the fuck you are. When you're dealing with friends and family members and things of that nature, sometimes they overwhelming. Friends and family, they're overwhelming because they pour and they dump so much on you, especially if you're used to being him or especially if you used to being her. You know, the him or the her in your family that everybody rely on. When you used to being that individual, they rely on you so much. They put so much on you. You got to remind yourself of who the fuck you are. You got to remind yourself of who you are. But before you remind yourself, you got to, outside of you remind yourself, you got to also remind them. You got to also let them know who you are. You got to also let them know who you are. You stand up. You stand up. But then when you stand up, you stand out. And you stand out why? Because you had to remind yourself of who the fuck you were. This is me. I've been him. I've been her. I've been that. I've been all that. A lot of folk ain't used to that. I just said something. I just said, a lot of folk ain't used to that though. Yeah. A lot of folk ain't used to being that. A lot of folk wasn't never necessarily coming up in their life used to being that it person, that one that always had something about them. Couldn't quite put their finger on it, but they knew you had a thing with you. You know, they knew you had something about yourself, you know. And sometimes you lose yourself in everybody else's emotion and everybody else's feeling. But guess what? You got to reel that thing back in and remind yourself to remind everybody else who the fuck you are. I just said it like 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 or 6 times, but I mean it when I say it. Remind yourself. Remind yourself. You know how oftentimes with these type of videos, you get individuals that say, I don't know who need to hear this. Me, motherfucker. That's who need to hear. That's why I'm saying. That's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm making it, because I'm the one who need to hear this. In this moment, in this time, in this era, in this situation, I'm the one that need to hear this. I need to hear this. I need to remind myself to remind everybody else who the fuck I am. With that being said, I ain't gonna talk y'all head off. Again, this was Guns. Back at y'all again with another Black Ops Bando TV. Remember, live strong or die weak. Do man shit. Ain't no pressure. Let them know what's up. Remind yourself to remind the others of who you are. None less than. Do man shit. Let that dog out.